Good morning students. Today is the lecture 10 under module 4. As you know that we are discussing the characterization of membranes. Today we will discuss microfiltration membrane characterization, under which we will cover bubble point method, bubble point with gas permeation, mercury intrusion and permeability method. Then we will learn the characterization of ultrafiltration membranes. So, in which we will discuss about gas adsorption, desorption, thermoporimetry and permporimetry, and then liquid displacement, and finally, the solute rejection method, which is called as molecular weight cutoff experiment, which is mostly used by the membrane manufacturers to decide the molecular weight cutoff of their particular membrane. So, let us start. So, let us understand a fermentation process. So, I do not know how many of you understand a fermentation process. So, those who have biotechnology background, they must be knowing what is fermentation. So, actually why I am asking taking this example, because this is one of the classic example in which we will find so many different types and sizes and molecular weights as well as shapes of particles. So, like that there will be suspended particles which are our microorganisms, it can be yeast, fungi, algae, bacteria, anything. Then we will have different kinds of alcohol, where we have ethanol, wine, beers, distilled spirits. Then we will have carboxylic acid such as citric acid, lactic acid, gluconic acid, and then L-amino acids like alaline, then leucine, histidine, together with other different high molecular weight components such as enzymes. And these are the apparent dimensions of the different types of particles and their respective ions. You can see that yeast, fungi, bacteria, they are of the order of this 1000 to 10,000. These are all in nanometers. Then we will have viruses in 30 to 300 nanometers. We have proteins, enzymes, okay, inorganic ions, and the water molecular weight is 18. Okay. 0.2 nanometer is the hydrodynamic radius of water molecules. So, the morphology of the polymeric material, that is whether it is crystalline, amorphous, glassy or rubbery. So, these are all used for preparation of membranes. So, and they affect directly the membrane permeability. So, factors such as temperature, interaction between solvent solute with polymeric material, they also have large influence on the segmental motions. Consequently, membrane properties may change if the temperature, feed composition, etc. are changed. So, let us again understand, though we have been discussing it many times and I have shown you in many slides, since each classes are different, let us again try to understand the sizes of the pores that we are going to characterize. So, the macropores greater than 50 nanometer, mesopores 2 nanometer to 50 nanometer, and micropores lesser than 2 nanometer. So, this is the pore size classification and given by IUPAC. Now, the performance of the membranes depends on the properties of the membrane. Thus, membrane characterization is an important technique exercise from membrane developers and membrane users. Now, some of the properties include mechanical strength. So, basically tensile strength and the bursting pressure, then chemical resistance like pH range, compatibility with other organic solvents, permeability to different species, for example, pure water permeability and then gas permeability, average porosity and pore size distribution, the most important membrane properties. Then sieving properties like our nominal molecular weight cutoff and electrical properties, right. So, which will be decided by the membrane zeta potential. Now, let us see the first method of today's lecture, which is called bubble point method. So, it is one of the classic and most easily adaptable technique for membrane microfiltration membrane characterization, can be done easily in any lab. So, the method essentially measures the pressure needed to blow air through a liquid filled membrane, and the top of the filter is placed in contact with liquid. Essentially, it is water which fills all the pores of the membrane and the membrane gets wetted. The bottom of the filter is in contact with air, and as the pressure is gradually increased, bubbles of air penetrate through the membrane at certain pressure. So, this method was first used by Beckholt in the early years of this century. Now, let us understand how this process works. Please see this particular image. As you can see that there is a module or some sort of arrangement which is holding your membrane. So, this is your membrane, okay, and here the liquid is present. Now, I am passing nitrogen from the bottom of this membrane, right. The membrane is getting already is wetted with the liquid or water. So, we can use Laplace equation, the classic Laplace equation, okay, to find out the pore radius. So, which is given by this R p equals to 2 gamma by delta p cos theta. So, R p is the radius of the capillary shaped pores. Why we are talking about capillary? Because it is assumed in particular this equation that the pores are capillary shaped, okay, and gamma is the surface tension at the liquid air interface. Now, how this happens? Now, what will happen basically, this is the principle. Okay. So, as you can see, P 1 is the pressure from the bottom side of the this one membrane which we are supplying, and P 2 is the pressure at the upstream side of the membrane, that is basically the liquid pressure. Okay. And obviously, P 1 is greater than P 2 because P 1 is what we are supplying from the bottom side. Now, what will happen? So, these pores are actually filled with liquid. So, basically these are actually filled with liquid. Try to understand, this is one of the pore, okay, which is filled with liquid. Now, what I am doing is that I am passing nitrogen through this, okay, right. What will happen? So, similarly here also nitrogen is coming, here also it is coming, okay, and here also it is coming, right. Everywhere these are all pores, and whatever you are seeing by sketches. So, this is your membrane material. So, what will happen basically? So, nitrogen will try to pass through the pores of the membranes. So, when nitrogen try to pass through the pores of the membrane, initially what will happen, the largest pores will be emptied, because the pressure that is required to empty a large pore is much lesser than that is required to empty a small pore. So, the pore size actually matters. Then when the gas is passing through the liquid filled pores of the membrane, it will pass slowly through like this, right, becomes like this, then it keeps on moving, right, then it moves out basically, and you get a air bubble on the top of the membrane. So, an air bubble will penetrate through the pores when its radius is equal to that of the pore. That means, your contact angle is 0 degree. So, your cos theta in the Laplace equation becomes 1. So, the penetration will first occur through the largest pores, since the pressure is known as the pore and since the pressure is known, the delta p we know. So, that is why we can calculate the pore radius from this particular equation, right. So, you can see again I am trying to, so this is the same image, it is a color image only. So, air or nitrogen is passing through this, you can see the initially this is the largest pore among all these pores, you can see this is the largest pore at least from the side bottom side. So, that is getting displaced, so liquid is displaced from the largest pore. Then again when we increase the pressure, smallest pore will also displaced. So, bubble point method is used to measure the largest active pores in a given membrane. Now, please understand that this is one of the most this one, though it is a simple technique and one of the most important technique to measure the microfiltration membrane. Why? Because only the largest and only the active pores actually are getting characterized. Since we are characterizing, we are pressurizing the membrane from the bottom side. So, any pore that is dead end, that is not taking part in this particular exercise. So, the equation suggests that bubble point method is independent of the type of liquid. Now, but if different liquids are using, because the type of liquid has nothing to do, because the equation is R p equals to, here in this equation it is 2 gamma by delta p cos theta. Cos theta if it is 1, then it is 2 gamma by delta p. So, here R p is a consequence of nothing but delta p, and here surface tension is of course that is constant, right. So, the type of liquid has nothing to do with in this equation. However, let us assume that you are taking different types of liquids, then what will happen? You will get different results. Now, the reason for that is that different types of liquids are wetting the membrane differently. So, that is why most of the time isopropanol is being used. So, other factors that can influence this particular measurement technique is that the length of the pores and the affinity between the wetting liquid and the membrane material, that is also very important. Now, the next method is bubble point with gas permeation. Now, at a certain minimal pressure, which is called actually the bubble point, the largest pores will be empty. okay, and the gas flow will increase by convective flow through these pores. Now, bubble point methods, it has some limited information, and therefore, another method was developed that combines the bubble point concept with the measurement of the gas flow through the emptied port. So, what is happening in this particular technique is that initially there is a membrane, okay, that is a dry membrane through which we are passing the gas, and we are measuring the flux of the gas. So, gas flux is being measured as a function of pressure, and we will get a straight line, right, because the pores are there. So, your gas will pass through unhindered. Now, what is happening in the next phase? Now, the membrane is the same membrane is being wetted using a particular liquid. Using most of the times you can go for isopropanol or water. Now, again the gas flow through the membrane is being measured. So, this second part is nothing but our earlier bubble point method. So, at a very low pressure, the pores are still filled with liquid, and the gas flow which is determined by the diffusion through the gas through the liquid is very low. Now, when you increase the pressure, it will the smaller pores will be emptied actually, or they will take part in this particular gas flow. Okay, and at highest pressure, the gas flow of dry membrane should be equal to the wet membrane. So, this is what. Okay. So, you can see that this is the dry curve. So, that is it is a straight line, and this red line is the representation of the wet curve. Okay. So, you can see this is what is the maximum delta P minimum here, that corresponding to the maximum pore size, and that is the bubble point. Okay. You can this is the bubble point. Then at the maximum pressure is same for both dry method as well as wet method, and we will get the minimum pore size, right. This method is suitable or the characterization of macropores for the characterization of the macropores, okay, and can also be applied for the microfiltration membranes with pore size up to 50 nanometers. So, there is a F missing here. Okay. Now, let us understand another method. This is actually a modification of the bubble point method to determine the pore mouth size distribution of porous material. Now, what we have discussed, these are all we have discussed two bubble point method. One is bubble point, the usual bubble point in which the liquid that is filled inside the pores of the membranes are displaced. In the second method with the gas permeation, so we are measuring the gas flow rate for a dry membrane, then we are wetting the membrane, and again we are measuring. Now, in all these things, what is happening that what we are characterizing is the pore throat. Now, please look at this particular image, you can understand this is a pore, okay, here, okay, and you can see this is the pore throat, or you can tell it is the constriction inside the pore. You can even call it the smallest constriction in the pore, because eventually that will determine its size will all determine what type of solute will pass through it. And but what is actually required, because initially it happens that we need to characterize the, suppose we are characterizing from the membrane from the top side, okay, you can do it using your SEM and other methods. So, which will take into account the dead pores also, dead end pore also, and it will the SM method which we have learned earlier. So, it talks about characterizing from the top surface. So, that means it is characterizing your pore mouth. So, this is what is being characterized. So, if this method, if we use this modified method, then we can correlate our results. This is what is the basic intention. So, instead of characterizing the pore throat, let us characterize the pore mouth. So, this is the conventional bubble point method. Okay. In this particular method, what is happening? So, the pore of the mouth is filled through the liquid when the gas is passed. Okay. So, when the gas is passing, I am dropping liquids on the mouth, on the pore mouth. Okay. So, what will happen? You can see this. So, initially before putting the liquid on the top of on the mouth of the pore, okay, the gas is passing through here freely, then I am putting it. So, putting the liquid on the top of the membrane or the pore mouth itself, what will happen? You can see gas here it is coming now, it is trying to escape through this liquid, and will make a this one convex type of surface here. Okay. Then what is happen? I am still increasing the pressure, and I am and the liquid is there. Okay. So, you can see the liquid is coming here. Okay, and the gas flow is still continuing. So, we can again do this. Let us understand it clearly. Okay. So, this is our classical bubble point method. Here what is happening? So, we are adding a liquid to the pore mouth while purging the pores through the gas. So, the gas is purging, and at that time only simultaneously I am adding the liquid to the pore mouth. So, it can be water. Okay. So, monitor the pore closing via gas flux variation with the decrease in gas pressure. So, detect the critical gas pressures when the liquid closes the pore mouth. So, when the liquid closes the pore mouth, something like this. Okay. Here this time you determine the critical gas pressure. Now, then from here only we can understand what is the size of the pore mouth, and the last bubble that relates to the largest bubble. Whatever at the fag end the last bubble is getting created. So, that is corresponding to the largest pore mouth. So, students, the next method that we are going to discuss today is the mercury intrusion method. So, this is very important method, as because most of the membranes and the catalyst and adsorbents always use this method to find out the pore volume. So, we have discussed about pore sizes distribution, how to find out the pore radius, all these things, but we have never talked about pore volume. Pore volume is also very important, especially in adsorbents and catalyst, but this is also important for membranes. Okay, because in many times if you are using the membrane in membrane contactors, reactors or bioreactors, so that time pore volume is also plays a big or important role. So, this method is a variation of bubble point method. In this method, mercury is forced to a dry membrane. Okay. So, membrane is not getting wet, and the relationship between the pressure and pore size is again given by the Laplace equation. Now, since mercury do not wet the membrane, so mercury does not wet the membrane, that is the contact angle is greater than 90 degree. So, the above equation can be rewritten as Rp is minus 2 gamma cos theta by delta p. So, gamma is being so negative sign is being used to take care of the cos theta. Since the contact angle of mercury for polymeric material, most of the polymeric material is 141.3 degree, and the surface tension is 0.48 and newtons per meter. So, the equation reduces to Rp equals to 7492 by delta p. So, again you can see from this particular equation 7492 is become constant. So, Rp is a consequence of delta p. So, the volume of mercury can be determined very accurately. Why? Because the mercury is not wetting the membrane, whatever is getting inside the membrane pores, we are knowing the volume, and pore size distribution can be determined quite precisely. So, the equation assumes that capillary pores are present. However, this is not generally the case, and for this reason a morphology constant also must be introduced. Most importantly, very high pressure must be avoided because they may damage the porous structure and lead to erroneous pore size distribution. So, to push the mercury actually inside the smallest pores, you need to apply very high pressure. So, certain times it happens that if the membrane is very thin, then membrane will rupture. So, at the lowest pressure the largest pores will be filled. Okay. And on increasing the pressure the progressively smaller pores will be filled. This will continue until all the pores have been filled and a maximum intrusion value is reached. Now, the pore size can covered by this technique usually is from 5 nanometer to 10 micron. This means most of the microfiltration membranes or almost all microfiltration membranes can be characterized with a substantial proportion of the ultrafiltration range also. However, the disadvantage in this particular method is the apparatus is very expensive and the small pore size requires a large pressure. So, the membrane may get rupture or it will eventually it may get cracks or develop cracks and gets ruptured, then we will get erroneous results. This is how actually it happens. So, this is a schematic illustration of the different types of pore. We have never discussed something called a closed pore. You can see this is a closed pore. So, a closed pore is a pore inside the membrane material, okay, but it has no openings neither to the upstream side or to the bottom side. Then we have blind pores. So, these blind pores are nothing but dead end pores. Okay. Many times blind pores can come up to this also, it depends what type of it is, and it is open here. Okay. Right. Then we have cross linked pores. So, the two or more than two pores are linked with each other. Then we have through pores. So, actually whatever our intention as a membrane scientist or researcher should be that we should get maximum this type of pores, which are called through pores. Okay. So, this is the mercury contact angle with the porous material, okay, and this is how actually it happens, and there is a vacuum, the sample is hold here and mercury is here, okay, and when we are pressurizing it, right, so mercury is getting inside the sample. And the next method that we are going to discuss is permeability method, right. This is again one of the most important method for characterization of our microfiltration membranes. So, if capillary pores are assumed to be present, the pore size can be obtained by measuring flux through the membrane at a constant pressure using the Hagen-Poiseuille equation. So, here you see the equation epsilon r square by 8 mu tau, and this one here delta p by delta x. Okay. So, here J is the water flux which is as a result of the driving force, which is delta p by delta x, and delta p being the pressure difference and delta x is the membrane thickness. Like the R is the pore side of the radiation, then we have the liquid viscosity which is given in Pascal second, surface porosity and the tortuosity factor. So, tortuosity factor is actually geometric parameter, and the pore size distribution can be obtained by varying the pressure. It is not essential that the liquid should wet the membrane. Essentially what we are doing here in this method is that we are measuring the flux of either of a liquid that is passing through the membrane. Okay. So, that is the amount, so we are collecting the volume of the permeate basically and measuring it. So, this method is very simple, and usually water is used. Water flux through the membrane can be measured as a function of applied pressure. At a certain minimum pressure, the largest pores becomes permeable, with the smallest pores still remain impermeable, and when we increase the pressure, then the smallest water will also flow through the smallest pores. So, this minimum pressure depends on the type of membrane material, that means the contact angle, type of permeate also, surface tension and also the pore size. So, according to the Laplace equation, the increase in water flux is proportional to the increase in applied pressure. So, this is very simple method. So, you have a membrane, you just put it in a dead end filtration module and filled it with water, and then pass and pressurized it. Once when you are pressurizing it, then we are getting permeate. That permeate you measure and you get flux from that. So, from flux pressure characteristics, the pore size distribution can be estimated using this particular equation. Okay. So, when pressure is increased further, the flux increases linearly with pressure, and the Hagen-Poiseuille relationship assumes that pores in the membrane are cylindrical, but generally this is not the case. Right. You remember in one class we have discussed that Hagen-Poiseuille equation assume that pores are cylindrical of nature, and there is another equation which is called Kozny-Karman equation. There it is assumed that the pores are the interspaces between the closely packed spheres. So, let us look at these two figures here. So, the first figure is flux versus delta p, which is giving me at p minimum. This is the p minimum, you can see, okay, and the corresponding minimum flux here. Okay. So, this particular straight line is getting obtained. So, this is for the uniform pore size, if a membrane is having uniform pore size. If a membrane is having a pore size distribution, right, then you will get the flux and versus delta p graph something like this. Okay. So, here this is the p minimum and this is the maximum pressure that we are getting. Okay. So, it can be anything, if you have a pore size distribution, can be anything like something like this, and okay, and usually the uniform pores, there should not be distribution. So, usually it is for our Zeolyr type of membranes. So, as I was just mentioning about the Kozny-Karman equation. So, this is the Kozny-Karman equation. Here K is the membrane constant, also called Kozny-Karman constant. So, which is dependent on the pore shape and tortuosity, and here epsilon is the porosity and S is the specific surface area. Now, the permeability method can be used for both microfiltration and ultrafiltration membranes. So, this is also very important to note that. So, both MF and UF membranes can be characterized using this method. Then let us understand the and try to learn the different characterization techniques for the ultrafiltration membrane. So, ultrafiltration is a membrane based pressure driven process in which the selectivity of separation is mainly determined by the solute size. So, size exclusion separation basically. This technique has evolved since 1960s as a consequences of the development of asymmetric reverse osmosis membrane, right. So, our membrane developed by Loeb and Souri-Rajan, we have discussed that many times. So, unlike reverse osmosis membrane which mainly deals with desalination in similar processes, ultrafiltration has a broader variety of applications. So, I have listed only the 4 different broader applications. So, the first is concentration of solutes by removal of solvent. Second is purification of solvent by removal of solute. Third is fractionation of solute, and fourth is the analysis of complex solutions for specific solutes. Then ideal ultrafiltration membrane must have the following characteristics. So, what are those? So, they should have a high hydraulic permeability to solvent, right. That means the most of the solvents should pass through, Sharp retention cutoff. So, the membrane must be capable of retaining completely or nearly all solutes above some specified value, which is known as the molecular weight cutoff. Subsequently, we will discuss this molecular weight cutoff at the fag end of our lecture today. Then membrane should have a good mechanical durability, it should have good chemical and thermal stability, and it should have excellent manufacturing reproducibility and ease of manufacture, which is more important for the membrane manufacturers. Ultrafiltration membrane differ from microfiltration membrane in the terms of their morphology, because ultrafiltration membranes are usually asymmetric membranes. So, we have a skin layer, we have discussed this many times. So, there is a skin layer, it is a asymmetric nature. So, there is a skin layer which is fused on the top of the microporous backing, or that is microporous support actually. The skin layer gives selectivity to the membrane, and the role of the microporous backing layer is providing the mechanical support. The thickness of the skin layer can range from 0.2 to 10 micron. So, depending on the material and application, what is our intended application. So, but it is very clear, I have told you earlier many times also that whether it is a composite membrane, whether it is a asymmetric membrane for ultrafiltration applications, the skin layer, the top layer should be as thin as possible, because if it is more thick, then it will provide an additional membrane resistance to the flow. So, which is actually not good. Ultrafiltration membranes are also considered as porous membrane, however, the structure is typically asymmetric. So, such asymmetric membranes consist of a thin top layer. The resistance to mass transfer is almost determined by the top layer. So, for this reason, the characterization of ultrafiltration membrane involves the characterization of the top layer. So, what we are going to, this is why we are discussing this. Now, you can understand that we are discussing the ultrafiltration characterization, it is asymmetric membrane, and what I am going to characterize is the top layer. Okay, the thin top layer, the skin layer, that is what I am going to characterize, because that is actually doing the separation. So, the thickness, pore size distribution and porosity of this skin layer we are going to characterize. So, typical pore diameter will be usually in the range of 20 to 1000 angstrom. Since the pore size is small, microfiltration characterization techniques cannot be used for characterization of ultrafiltration membrane, though we know that we can use a permeability method for ultrafiltration membranes also. The resolution of ordinary scanning electron microscope is generally too low to determine the pore sizes for the top layer in the ultrafiltration region basically. Furthermore, mercury intrusion method and bubble point cannot be used because the pore size is too small, and so you need to apply very high pressure. The moment you go beyond a proper certain pressure, what will happen that your membrane will damage. Then too high pressure would be required, which would eventually damage the polymeric structure. However, permeation experiments can still be used, and this can be extended by use of various types of solute. Now, let us understand and discuss what are the different types of techniques that we are going to discuss today. So, first one is gas adsorption desorption, then thermoporometry, then permoporometry, then liquid displacement, then fractional rejection measurements, and transmission electron microscopy. So, these are the techniques which are being used. We have already discussed TEM in one of our earlier class, and we are going to discuss the other methods today. So, let us discuss the gas adsorption and desorption technique method. So, this is a well known technique for determining the pore size and pore size distribution in porous membrane. The adsorption and desorption isotherm of in an inert gas is determined as a function of the relative pressure. Usually nitrogen is used as adsorption gas, and the experiments are carried out by boiling at liquid nitrogen at almost 1 bar. The adsorption isotherm starts at relatively low pressure. At certain minimum pressure, the smallest pore will be filled with liquid nitrogen, almost the size is 2 nanometer. As pressure is increased further, the larger pores will be filled, and near saturation pressure all the pores will be filled. So, this is the method is all about. So, we are adsorbing the liquid nitrogen over the surface of the membrane, and then inside the pores also, then we are desorbing it. This is what is being done for this particular method. Total pore volume is determined by the quantity of the gas adsorbed near saturation pressure. So, this is another method to find out the pore volume apart from your mercury intrusion in microfiltration membrane. So, desorption occur only when the pressure is decreased starting at saturation pressure. So, the desorption curve is generally not identical to the adsorption curve, that is why, and this is the reason, the reason is that the capillary condensation occurs differently during adsorption and desorption. And due to this there is something called hysteresis. You can see this is hysteresis. Ideally this curve adsorption, this is actually adsorption and this is your desorption. Ideally your desorption should have followed something like this, but it is not following due to the capillary condensation that is occurring differently for adsorption and desorption, and this is called hysteresis actually. So, capillary condensation, why it is different for desorption? The reason is that the concave meniscus of the liquid in the pore, this is you can see when it is adsorbing, it is the pores, let us say this is the pore, when it is getting inside the pore, so pore is getting filled, so it will be filled something like this. Okay. So, this is happening, this is pore filling during adsorption, but when I am decreasing the pressure I am going for desorption. So, whatever is inside the pores it should actually come out, right. So, that is what is desorption. So, during that process initially it will form a meniscus something like this, okay. You can see this is right. So, this is a concave meniscus, the liquid in the pore. So, that is due to this the evaporation of nitrogen happens, okay, at a relatively lower pressure, because the vapor pressure of liquid is actually reduced inside the pores. Let us try to understand the process little in a detail by seeing this particular slide. You can see, okay, you can see whatever it is seeing in the first plot here, the line corresponding, it is showing actually the adsorption and desorption plot, how ideally it should happen. So, we are starting adsorption, right. So, you can see a few molecules are getting adsorbed on the surface of the pore, as well as inside the pore, as well as on the top of the membrane also. So, our adsorption starts here, right. Then we are proceeding the adsorption. So, they have formed a particular monolayer adsorption system here. Then we are further proceeding our adsorption. You can see bilayer deposition starts. Okay. Here we can see trilayer deposition starts. Now, we are further increasing, right, and we can see how the pores is getting filled here, further increasing. Okay. So, this is what we are actually reached saturation, as we have this pore is completely filled by the liquid nitrogen, right. Now, what? Now, we have to decrease the pressure to start desorption. So, decreasing the pressure start once we reach saturation. So, we have reached saturation here, now we are decreasing it, right. So, we start decreasing. The moment we decrease, what will happen? Due to the relatively low vapor pressure inside that, there is a meniscus that is formed here, you can see, and that is actually preventing the escape of the liquid nitrogen is a much slower rate than that of the adsorption. That is why the hysteresis curve is coming into picture. I hope it is now clear to you. The lowering of vapor pressure for a capillary of radius r is given by Kelvin equation. You can use this particular equation. So, P by P naught and ln of that equals to minus 2 gamma v by r k r t cos theta. So, here theta is the angle that I assume to be 0. So, that cos theta becomes 1, and this relationship can be simplified if you are taking nitrogen as the adsorption. So, r k can be expressed as r k is minus 4 L log P by P naught. The pore radius may be calculated from this equation, r p equals to r k plus t. Now, what is t? Now, t is the thickness of the adsorbed layers of vapor in the pores. So, that is actually t, and r k is the Kelvin radius. So, r p is the pore radius, and obviously, it is true that r k will be less than r p. So, for pores with a ink bottle shape, so ink bottle shape is something like this, okay, right. As with voids in a system of closed packed spheres, the adsorption curve increases slowly, but desorption takes place at the same relative pressure, because all of the pore entrants have the same size. Okay. Now, this method is generally not very accurate in membranes with large pore size distribution and without a definite pore geometry. In ceramic membrane, the morphology is better defined. So, we can characterize ceramic ultrafiltration membranes easily using this particular technique. This slide will make you understand the different types of pores and their corresponding hysteresis. Please understand that hysteresis curves also are of different nature. It is not that everything is following whatever I saw you earlier. It is never happens like that. So, for the cylindrical pores, that was actually for the cylindrical pores, this one. Okay. So, for the cylindrical pores, here hysteresis curves look something like this. If pores are slits, then we can have a broader hysteresis plot, and if we have waist shaped pores, so we can have these two different types of hysteresis curve, type C and type D. If the pores are a bottleneck, okay, then type E type of hysteresis curve is being obtained, and if we have a blind hole, then you can see the adsorption and desorption are actually falling on the same particular line. So, here again little extension of our earlier slide actually. So, if you see this A is type 1 H1 type of hysteresis, okay, here the pores are very uniform here, right. So, you can have a delayed condensation. Okay, here hysteresis curves looks something like this, right. Then in a if we have pores of something like this of different of size. So, here pore this one the neck width, okay, is more than the neck width of the critical neck width actually W. So, you can see here W is the neck width, WC is the critical neck width. If W is greater than WC in this particular this one, so pore blocking will takes place, right. So, when pore blocking takes place, because of the small size of the pore, when pore blocking happens, then you get something like this. So, here a desorption curves plots like this. So, you get some hysteresis here. So, here again when W becomes greater than WC, okay, for a different type of pore, okay, pore geometry, right. So, you will have hysteresis something like this, and for when W becomes WC. So, this is basically the fourth one, this particular one. Here actually hysteresis indicating cavitation in the desorption branch. So, here cavitation is happening during desorption, and we get a response something like this. So, these are actually isotherms. Okay. So, in a summary, we can understand that if suitable apparatus is available, then gas adsorption and desorption method is very simple. The main problem is to relate the pore geometry to the model, which allows pore size and pore size distribution to be determined from the isotherm. It is nothing complicated actually, it is easy process, but you should have a apparatus fine. Dead end pores do not contribute, but they are getting measured. So, that is another actually disadvantage of this particular method. Because what we are doing actually, we are adsorbing the liquid nitrogen from the top of the membrane, and the pores are open to the top side, and what is that is closed from the bottom side, the dead end pores, that we are also characterizing, because the liquid nitrogen also getting deposited on the surface inside the dead end pores. So, ceramic membrane often gives better result, because their structure is very uniform and they are less susceptible to capillary forces. The next method is thermoporometry. So, this is based on calorimetric measurement of a solid liquid transition. So, this is a very different method. We will try to understand what is simple mechanism. Okay. Here we will study the transition of pure water. So, transition means from its solid to liquid or liquid to solid. So, phase transition we are studying. Okay. And that will tell us the pore size for a particular membrane, usually for ultrafiltration membrane. So, the temperature at which the water in the pore freezes. Okay. So, that means the extent of undercooling, that is what we are going to measure. That is also dependent on the pore size. Okay. As the pore size decreases, the freezing point of the water also decreases. So, a large pore, it will freeze faster, at the small pore it will freeze a little later. So, each pore size has its own specific freezing point. So, this is the important takeaway message. So, each pore size or pore size has its own specific freezing point. So, for a cylindrical pores containing water, the equation can be utilized is this: Rp equals to 0.68 minus 32.33 divided by delta T. So, here Rp is the pore radius and delta T is the extent of undercooling, and the relationship between heat effect, that is W, and the melting point depression can be expressed as W is equals to minus 0.155 delta T square minus 11.3 delta T and 3 minus 332. So, these equations can be utilized to calculate our pore radius. So, I could not find a proper figure. This figure is taken from Mulder actually. So, you can let us try to understand actually. So, the effect of liquid solid transition, that is freezing or melting, is measured by means of a differential scanning calorimeter. So, you should have a DSC apparatus. If you have a DSC apparatus, you can easily do that, otherwise you cannot do it. So, that is another disadvantage for this particular technique. So, you can see there are 3 different types of the pores I have seen. One is R1, one is R2, one is R3. So, each will have different radius. So, R1 is a bigger pore size, and which is greater than R2, which is greater than R3. So, R3 is the smallest one. So, you can see when the process is happening, initially as I told the largest pore will freeze faster. So, you can see that the largest pore, the water is freezed and it has become solid. Solid means it is actually ice. Okay. Then you can see in the second pore, which pore size is little smaller than the R1. Okay. Here it is half liquid and half solid, and in R3 at the same time, okay, since it is the smallest pore, it is completely liquid. So, this is how it happens actually. So, this is just an example of comparison of two methods. So, using thermopyrometry and gas adsorption and desorption. Now, please understand that both these methods, so they are actually measuring and taking into account the dead end pores. So, that is why their results are very close. You can see 5.3 and 5.5, they are very close to each other. Okay. So, the summary of thermopyrometry, we can say that it is a good method, very reliable, it is fine if we have a DSA apparatus. Now, assumption needs to be made for pore geometry in order to calculate the pore size and pore size distribution. All pores are measured, including the deader pores, probably that is one of the disadvantage, and pore size distribution also can be measured. So, the next method is thermopyrometry. So, thermopyrometry has a disadvantage that all the pores present in the membrane are getting characterized. So, including the dead end pores. So, which actually is not good understanding of the actual separation, that is what is happening, permeation. And thermopyrometry is based on the blockage of pores by means of a condensable gas and linked with simultaneous measurement of gaseous flux. We will see in the next slide how it happens. So, we are blocking the pore using a condensable gas. Now, such blockage is based on the same principle of capillary condensation as adsorption and desorption hysteresis. So, only active pores are characterized, easy to measure pore size and pore size distribution of the thin top layer of the ultrafiltration membrane. Let us understand how this happens. So, this is the membrane module which is happening, this is our membrane. Okay. So, here we are using ethanol as a condensable gas. It is not mandatory to use ethanol, you can use any other condensable gas, but you need to understand the properties of that particular gas with respect to the properties of the membrane. So, here in this example ethanol is being used as the condensable gas, and then nitrogen and oxygen are being used as the two non-condensable gases, and out of these two non-condensable gases we can measure the flux of any one gas. So, let us say if I am measuring the flux of oxygen. Okay. So, oxygen is flowing from the back side of the this one of the pore, and it is getting passed like this, okay, from the top side. Then we can use the oxygen flow using a oxygen selective electrode. Now, let us understand how the process actually happens. Now, please look at this particular image here. Okay. This is the principle. So, in a relative pressure, that P by P naught, the relative pressure is equals to 1 unity. This means all the pores are filled with the condensable gas. That means when the condensable gas is filled, it becomes liquid. That is why it is written actually liquid filled membrane, right. You can see everything is filled, right. Then what is the next step? We are decreasing the pressure. So, your relative pressure is between 0 to 1, somewhere between that, slowly we are decreasing. You can see the largest pores will be emptied first. You can see the largest pore, it has emptied first, then smallest pores are getting emptied, okay, at a certain particular decreasing pressure, right. So, then when the relative pressure equals to 0, then what will happen? And there is no liquid, everything has gone out, and we have a empty membrane, completely empty membrane. So, what we understand is that by decreasing the pressure slowly, okay, we can find out the pore size distribution. So, this is what actually I have described. So, on reducing the relative pressure, the condensed vapor is removed from the largest pore in accordance with the Kelvin equation, and the diffusive gas flow through these pores are measured. So, on reducing relative pressure further, small pores become available for gas diffusion. When the relative pressure is reduced to 0, all the pores are open and gas flow proceeds through them. Now, as a certain pore radius is related to a specific vapor pressure, this is what is the principle. A certain pore radius is related to a specific vapor pressure. Okay. The measurement of the gas flow provides information about this number of the specific pores. So, by reducing the vapor pressure, pore size distribution can be obtained. So, in a summary we can say that it measures active pores only, okay, that is the beauty of this particular technique, and whereas adsorption, desorption, thermopyrometry is measuring dead on pores also. However, the disadvantage is difficulty in maintaining the same vapor pressure on both sides of the membrane. So, there is a trick basically here, and you need to maintain the vapor pressure on both sides of the membrane, because from one side we are flowing one non-condensable gas, either nitrogen, and from other side another one, oxygen. Okay. So, the method is difficult to employ with hollow fibers. So, hollow fiber membranes characterization is very difficult, but advantage is only active pores are being characterized. So, you can see how the cumulative pore volume figure looks from this particular experiment and how we get a particular pore size distribution, okay, using this particular method for a PPO membrane. Now, in a summary, we can understand from this particular figure the relationship between or the comparison between three different techniques that we have learned: gas adsorption desorption, thermopyrometry and Pond-pyrometry. You can see that gas adsorption desorption and thermopyrometry, they are their data whatever we are getting is very close is to each other, and they both of them are measuring the dead end pores also. However, since Pond-pyrometry is giving little higher side data, the reason that it is characterizing only the active pores. So, the next method is liquid displacement to characterize the ultrafiltration method membrane. So, this method is similar to gas flow bubble method. So, here the only difference between the gas flow bubble bubble point with gas flow basically is that instead of a gas we use a liquid. So, what we are doing, a liquid is displacing another liquid which is already filled in the pores of the membrane. Right. So, you can understand from this particular image how it happens. So, this is actually one pore of the membrane which is filled with a liquid. This is liquid, one of the liquid, okay, and is already filled, this particular liquid, and this is another liquid, okay, which is being pushed from the bottom side of the membrane, okay, and that particular liquid is displacing the liquid whatever is already there. So, here, okay, here there is a stagnant liquid that is present, okay, right, and this particular liquid is pushing and displacing the liquid which is already filled in the inside the pores. So, this is actually simple method, and just like air bubble point permeation, and however, the condition is that two immiscible liquids should be employed, completely immiscible liquids. So, one of these liquid will be used to fill the pores of the membranes, okay, which is present on the top side of the membrane also, and the second liquid is used to displace, which is from the bottom side of the membrane. Now, this can be achieved when a certain pressure is employed by given by the Laplace equation, and displacement starts at the largest pore. This is true for our usual gas bubble point method also. So, Hagen-Poiseuille equation can be used to calculate the flux and the pore size. The flow can be measured with a mass flow meter. In this way, the flux is obtained as a function of pore radius, and from this curve the pore size distribution can be calculated. Now, this method can be carried out in two ways. The first one is that pressure is varied stepwise and the liquid flow is measured. So, we can vary the pressure in a stepwise manner, and then we measure the flow. In a second method, a fixed flow is varied stepwise. So, the flow is varied actually stepwise using basically HPLC pump, and the pressure is maintained constant. So, the former method, the first one, is more easily performed with a flat membrane, but with hollow fiber membrane system pressure buildup may result irreproducible values, and in such case the second method is preferred. So, basically for flat sheet membranes you can go for the first one which is easy to do, and for the second method will be usually being used to characterize the hollow fiber membrane. So, this is one example of pore size distribution from using this particular liquid displacement method for a cell grade membrane. Cell grade is a commercial membrane. So, in Laplace equation the surface tension between the two liquids is very important, okay, and the proper selection of a low surface tension value can be obtained. So, this actually gives the surface tension values from different types of liquids. So, we can go water and air, we can go for methanol air, we can have ethanol air, we can have hexane air, we have isopentane air, and we have water isobutadiene for the liquid displacement method, okay. Both are liquids, okay, and you can see the surface tension is very low, the lowest 1.85. So, in summary we can say that liquid displacement is a membrane characterization method used to determine pore size distribution in both microporous and macroporous material, okay. So, advantage is that only active pores are characterized. However, the disadvantage is that the occurrence of swelling, okay, due to the stagnant liquid that changes the pore size. Now, if you are using the liquid one which is actually used to pre-fill the pores of the membrane, and the liquid is actually in contact with the membrane for certain time or little higher time, and if the liquid is not chosen properly, that it may swell the membranes, and when the membrane is swelling its pores are also getting swelled. So, you may get an erroneous value, and the setup is little complicated, and the pressure buildup may occur which interferes with the measurement. So, this is the disadvantage. Nevertheless, it is a easy method to do. Okay. It measures both microporous and mesoporous, macroporous. So, the next one, it is the solution rejection method, which is also called molecular weight cutoff membrane method. So, students, MWCO is called molecular weight cutoff, and when you buy a commercial membrane, you can see on the packing itself, it will be written either MWCO is 100 kilodalton, 150 kilodalton, 1000 kilodalton, so something like that, okay, or it will be written membrane cutoff. So, any one or simple cutoff. So, many companies write in different ways. So, what is it means? Basically, the ability to reject solute conveniently is expressed by this. So, molecular weight cutoff. So, what molecular weight solute is getting rejected and how much is getting rejected. So, we have seen the nominal rating, we have seen the absolute rating, based upon that the cutoff will be determined. So, by definition, definition is given by actually Drioli and his group. So, E. Drioli. So, molecular weight cutoff is the molecular weight of a globular protein or any other standard monodispersed solute, okay, like dextran, PVA, then polyvinyl pyrrolidone, okay, 90% of which is rejected by the membrane. So, this is how the definition of molecular weight cutoff. So, that means 90% of a particular solute having a particular molecular weight, okay, must be rejected by the membrane. If that is the case, then we can say that is the cutoff of that molecular weight of the protein will be called as the molecular weight cutoff of that particular membrane. So, along with the molecular weight of a solute, other parameters such as shape, flexibility of chain of a macromolecule are important factors which also determines the retentivity of the membrane. So, a straight chain polymer, for example, let us say polyacrylic acid, okay, of a molecular weight substantially larger than the molecular weight of the membrane may pass through it. Okay. Similarly, some branch chain proteins, but easily deformable molecules have been found to behave similarly. So, these are not good actually. So, other important factors that affect rejection of a solute are adsorption of the solute at the pore mouth. So, you know, adsorption is very instantaneous process, and we should also take care so that adsorption of the solutes, proteins, whatever it is we are using for the measurement, must not get adsorbed on the surface of the membrane. You do whatever, there will be some adsorption, but basically to minimize the adsorption, and if they starts adsorbing, there will be gel layer formation. So, then we cannot go for this particular measurement. So, adsorption depends on interaction of a solute with the membrane material, and you know, proteins are very prone to hydrophobic membrane. The pH and ionic strength of the solution as well as sometimes temperature also play a role. So, adsorption in the pore mouth reduces the effective pore size. If a layer of rejected solute accumulates on the feed side of the feed side surface of the membrane, so that is basically the gel layer, then additional resistance to flow actually happening. For a better performance in respect of molecular weight cutoff may be expected, since the gel layer has a sieving effect. So, you can see this how actually I was talking about sharp cutoff and diffuse cutoff. So, a sharp cutoff is the, so this is your actually ideal membrane. So, your ideal membrane molecular this one retention versus your molecular size is a straight line. However, the real membranes with relatively diffuse cutoff, okay. So, this is with a diffuse cutoff, okay, and the other curve, this curve is with a sharp cutoff. So, usually actually we wish that membranes, when we are making a membrane, whether at lab or in commercial scale, usually we try to aim that we have a sharp cutoff membrane, but it never happens because the membrane has a pore size distribution. Due to that, actually the cutoff becomes diffuse cutoff, okay. And this we have discussed earlier also, nominal rating 90%, 90 to 95%, and absolute rating is 100% rejection, okay. So, for most real membranes with pore size distributed over a range, they have a diffuse molecular weight cutoff, right. So, most of the commercial membranes, they are diffuse cutoff membranes, and retention is from 0 to 100% for a different molecular weight. So, this gives us membrane materials, typical molecular weight cutoff, their operating pH range, maximum operating temperature, that is actually recommended by the company or the manufacturer, their chlorine resistance and membrane configuration, means using that particular, let us say, the polysulfone. Okay. So, polysulfone is very good chlorine resistance, and it can be used to make flat sheet membranes, tubular membranes, as well as hollow fiber membranes. Okay. So, let us summarize the solute rejection measurement technique. So, this technique provides a simple method for indicating the performance of a given membrane. For this reason, they are very frequently used for industrial assessment of membranes. So, that means that I was telling na, so commercial manufacturers or the companies which make membranes, they all of them go for this particular measurement technique, which is the molecular weight cutoff membrane, because unless until they do, they cannot say what is the cutoff of the membrane, right. The quantitative predictions of membrane performance are differently to be obtained by such method, since other factors such as adsorption and concentration polarization often influences the permeation rate and membrane selectivity. So, we came to the conclusion of this lecture today. So, students, I have been giving this text and references. So, most of the material in today's lecture was taken from the M.H. Mulder, the basic principles of membrane technology. Please try to have this book if it is possible, and go through this particular today's lecture. Otherwise, you can refer other books also, okay, which is listed here. And in the next class, we are going to wind up this membrane characterization lectures actually. So, here we will learn about the characterization of ionic membranes and the characterization of non-porous membranes. So, non-porous membranes also needs to be characterized. So, their characterization methods are little different than the porous membranes. So, that we will learn. So, thank you very much. So, if you have any queries, please feel free to write to me at kmohanty@iitg.ac.in. Thank you.